How to Fall in Love with Uncertainty by Alan Watts. You see, one of the great misunderstandings of our time, and perhaps of all time, is that life is something that must be known before it can be lived. We have this curious notion that before we take a single step, before we draw our first breath of adventure, we must first have a map, a guarantee, a plan, something to assure us that the ground beneath our feet won't crumble the moment we move. But that's precisely the trouble. Because when you look closely, there is no ground. Life is not a solid platform. It's a dance, a song, a river. And the river doesn't stop to check where it's going, it flows. We human beings are the only creatures that seem frightened by that flow. The bird doesn't worry whether the branch will hold. The wave doesn't apologize for breaking. Yet here we are, tightening our grip on existence as if we could hold the ocean in our hands. Now, the irony, and it's a marvelous irony, is that the more we try to make life secure, the more insecure we feel. The more we attempt to know what's coming next, the more restless, anxious, and divided we become. For the act of grasping is precisely what makes us lose our balance. Uncertainty, you see, is not the enemy, it is the essential condition of being alive. Without it, there would be no surprise, no discovery, no joy, only the dull safety of repetition. To demand certainty from life is to ask the clouds to stop moving, the stars to stay fixed, the child never to grow. We long for security because we imagine that somewhere out there, there's a final answer, a place where nothing can go wrong. But what if such a place existed? A life without risk, without change, without mystery. That would be a life without movement, without laughter, without love, a frozen eternity of sameness. And that, my dear friend, is what we call death. So the real adventure, the genuine art of living, is not about eliminating uncertainty, but about falling in love with it, embracing the trembling, the not knowing, the delicious instability of the moment. To fall in love with uncertainty is to fall in love with life itself. Now, imagine a tightrope walker suspended above a canyon. There's no railing, no safety net, and yet she moves gracefully, step by step. Her balance doesn't come from clinging, it comes from listening to the wind, to her body, to the rope's slight sway beneath her feet. If she were to stiffen up, to try to control every motion, she'd fall. But because she allows herself to sway with the rope, she stays up. That's the secret. And that's the way we must move through existence, not stiff with fear, but supple with awareness. The moment you demand certainty from life, you stop participating in it. You start standing outside of your own experience, trying to plan, predict, control. But life, that marvelous, mischievous, unpredictable process, can't be grasped. It slips right through the fingers that try to hold it. Because you and life are not two separate things. You are the movement itself. You cannot escape uncertainty because you are uncertainty. Consider for a moment how the heart beats. You do not command it, it happens. The breath flows in and out, not by your deliberate choice, but by its own intelligence. The trees grow, the sun rises, the planets turn, and so do you. The illusion is that there's a separate you inside this process, a little pilot in the head steering everything. But that pilot, that thinker, that controller is itself a thought, a wave on the sea of change. And the more it insists on certainty, the more it separates itself from the living current of life. Now, uncertainty is not merely a condition of our outer circumstances, it is woven into the fabric of being itself. You cannot predict the next thought that will arise in your mind, the next emotion that will ripple through your chest. Even your sense of I shifts like light on water. You're never quite the same person from one moment to the next. And that's not a mistake. That's the miracle. To fall in love with uncertainty is to realize that control was never the point. It's like surfing. You don't control the ocean, you ride it. You feel its rise and fall, its rhythm and pulse. The joy is not in mastering the wave, but in dancing with it.
The same goes for relationships, for love itself. We fall in love not because we can predict the other person, but because they are mysterious, alive, full of surprise. The very thing that frightens us about uncertainty, its unpredictability, is also what makes life worth living. When you see this, you begin to relax. You begin to laugh. You begin to understand that it's quite all right not to know what's coming next. In fact, it's rather wonderful. The trouble begins when we mistake the map for the territory, when we think the ideas, the plans, the expectations we have about life are more real than life itself. We're so busy trying to make sense of the world that we forget to experience it. We look for formulas, philosophies, doctrines, all the while missing the shimmering immediacy of what's here. This sound, this breath, this flicker of light on your eyelid, that's the miracle you've been seeking. You see, certainty is a kind of death. When something becomes completely known, it ceases to be interesting. The mystery of life, the reason it continues to unfold, is because it can't be nailed down. The moment you think you've got it, it slips away. Like trying to hold water, the tighter you squeeze, the less you have. So what happens when you loosen your grip? When you stop demanding that life reveal all its secrets? Something extraordinary. You start to hear the music again. You start to feel the pulse beneath the chaos, and you realize that uncertainty was never against you, it is you, calling you home to the present.
Now, to live this way, to truly fall in love with uncertainty, is not merely an intellectual trick. You can't just tell yourself, yes, I shall stop worrying and live spontaneously, any more than you can tickle yourself. It doesn't work that way. The very effort to be spontaneous is self-defeating because it comes from the same mind that wants control. So, what can you do? You can begin by watching the play of life unfold without trying to stop it or direct it, the way you might watch the fire in a hearth. It dances this way and that, and you don't scold it for flickering the wrong way. You simply admire its motion. Try watching your own mind like that. The worries, the desires, the judgments, all of it. Let them rise and fall like flames. Don't fight them. Don't chase them. Just notice how they burn, how they change, how they fade. You will begin to sense that beneath all this flickering movement, there's something steady. Not in the sense of a fixed point, but more like a stillness that contains motion, the way space contains sound. And from that stillness, you begin to see that uncertainty is not chaos. It only feels chaotic when you resist it. When you stop resisting, uncertainty becomes rhythm. It becomes music. Consider how a melody works. If every note were predictable, it would be unbearable. You wouldn't listen for long to a tune that went ding, ding, ding in perfect order forever. What gives music its life is the gap, the variation, the tension between notes, the uncertainty of where it might go next. That's what keeps the ear awake. Life is like that, a jazz improvisation rather than a marching tune. The great secret is to join the band rather than insist on a script. And isn't that what love itself feels like? You don't fall in love because you know someone. You fall in love because you don't. Because they surprise you. They move you in ways you can't predict. The moment you think you've figured them out, the romance evaporates. The same goes for life. To love life is to love not knowing what it will do next. We are conditioned, however, to believe the opposite. From childhood, we are told to have a plan, to prepare, to aim, to control. Where are you going? What will you do? As if the meaning of life were somewhere at the end of a long corridor and not right here underfoot. So we grow up chasing certainty, like a man chasing his shadow. The faster he runs, the faster it escapes him. And all the while, the sunlight he runs beneath, the very source of the shadow, goes unnoticed. When you stop chasing, you discover that what you were running from was never dangerous at all. You were just afraid of not being in control. But the one who wants control is an illusion. The I that worries about uncertainty is itself uncertain, a shifting pattern of thoughts and memories. It's not a thing you can pin down. The real you is much vaster, much freer. You are not the one holding the universe together. You are the universe, momentarily playing at being human.
And when the play ends, the actor takes off the mask and laughs, not because it was meaningless, but because it was all so beautifully absurd. Think of it this way. You are standing at the edge of a forest at night. The path ahead disappears into darkness. You can only see the next few steps by the light you carry. But notice, the only way to see further is to walk. Each step reveals the next. That's how life unfolds. It doesn't reveal itself all at once. It opens like a flower, petal by petal, in its own time. So, to fall in love with uncertainty is to trust that unfolding, to walk without demanding to see the destination, to realize that you are the path and the path is walking itself. Now, there's a subtle shift that happens when you begin to live like this. The anxiety that once felt like an enemy starts to feel like energy. The unknown no longer feels like a threat, but like a horizon. You begin to taste the sweetness of not knowing. Imagine standing at the seashore watching waves roll in. You can't predict exactly how each one will break, but isn't that part of the fascination? The whole joy of it is that each wave is different. You don't try to freeze the sea, you let it move. And in its motion, you feel something vast, something that breathes with you. That's what uncertainty is. The ocean of life constantly expressing itself in new forms. But we have been taught to stand apart from it, to be observers. And so we worry, what if the next wave is too big? What if I'm swept away? But the truth is, you are the sea. You've never been anything else. The wave cannot drown in the ocean. To realize this is liberation, not the liberation of escaping life's unpredictability, but of dancing with it. When you dance, you don't ask, where is this going? You simply move. And the movement is the point. We forget this because our culture worships purpose. We are always going somewhere, chasing progress, enlightenment, achievement. But life is not a business meeting. It's a musical thing, meant to be enjoyed, not concluded. You don't listen to a symphony to hear the final chord. You listen for the unfolding of every note. So too with your life. If you spend your days rushing to the end, trying to make everything known and certain, you'll miss the melody. Now, of course, this doesn't mean you stop making plans or become careless. It simply means you stop believing that your plans can ever capture reality. Make plans as you might sketch clouds, loosely, with a smile, knowing they will change. When things don't go as expected, don't curse the storm. Watch how it clears the air, how it bends the trees, how it brings the scent of rain. You might find that what you called chaos was only a different kind of order. For the truth is, life always finds its balance. Even in the greatest uncertainty, there is harmony. You may not see it from the middle of the storm, but step back, look with wider eyes, and you'll see the pattern, the rhythm, the great cosmic improvisation. And if you can laugh right there in the middle of not knowing, then you've understood, you've fallen in love with uncertainty because you've realized it's the very heartbeat of existence.
You see, when you begin to trust the dance of life, something marvelous happens. Your perception of fear itself changes. Fear was never about the unknown. It was about resistance to it. Like a clenched fist, it's the tension of saying, no, not this, not yet. But when you open that fist, when you let the wind blow through your fingers, you discover that fear was only the shadow of freedom. Most people think freedom means having control, being able to choose and shape every detail of your future. But that's not freedom at all. That's tyranny of the self over life. Real freedom is the recognition that you don't need control, that the very flow of things carries you more wisely than any plan you could invent. Look at how your heart beats without permission, how wounds heal in their own time, how seasons turned whether you remember to mark the calendar or not. The intelligence that grows the trees and births the stars is the same intelligence that moves through you, breathing, blinking, dreaming. You are not apart from that. You are that. And so to fall in love with uncertainty is to remember that you were never steering this ship. You were the ocean all along. Now, imagine a leaf drifting on the current of a river. It doesn't fight to stay in one spot. It turns with the eddies, rides the rapids, glides over smooth stones. There's no guarantee of where it will end up, but look at the grace of it, how it belongs completely to the water. It's not safe in the sense that nothing will happen, but it's safe in the deeper sense that everything that happens is part of the flow. That's the security you've been looking for, not in certainty, but in belonging. Because when you truly belong to life, when you stop holding yourself apart as some anxious observer, uncertainty no longer feels like a threat. It feels like participation. You stop trying to fix the river's course and instead feel its current move through you. Every breath, every moment becomes a kind of surrender, not resignation, but harmony. And perhaps that's what faith really means. Not belief in a doctrine or a deity, but faith in the living process itself. Faith that you don't need to know how the story ends to love the page you're on. Now, this isn't to say that uncertainty is always comfortable. Oh no. Sometimes it's terrifying. Sometimes it tears away everything you thought you knew about yourself. The job disappears, the relationship ends, the future you built in your mind crumbles into dust. And there you stand, naked in the storm, not knowing who you are anymore. But that's precisely where the alchemy happens. When the structures fall apart, you discover something more fluid beneath them. The identity you defended so fiercely turns out to be just a costume. And when it's gone, you feel something vast, something ancient, something utterly free. That's the moment when uncertainty becomes your teacher. You start to see that everything you lose returns to the same ocean it came from. Every ending is a doorway in disguise. Every collapse is an invitation to rediscover the foundation that was never made of stone, the living foundation, the one that breathes, the one that changes. So how do you fall in love with uncertainty in daily life? You stop asking life to behave. You let it surprise you. When something unexpected happens, when the train is late, when plans go awry, when silence stretches longer than you hoped, notice the mind leaping to fill the gap. This shouldn't be happening. But what if it should? What if this moment, this gap, is the very pulse of the universe revealing itself? Try just once to do nothing about it. Don't fix, don't flee. Watch, feel, listen. The mind will chatter. I must know, I must do something. But if you stay still, you'll see that the panic has no center. It's smoke. It rises and dissolves. Beneath it, there's a quiet spaciousness, a gentle awareness that doesn't need to control anything. That awareness is who you really are. And the more you rest there, the more you see that life was never uncertain. Only your thoughts about it were. The river has always been flowing exactly as it must. The only confusion was believing you were separate from it. Let's take a simple example. The act of breathing. You breathe in, the air comes. You breathe out, the air goes. You never force it. And yet in that effortless exchange, the entire universe participates. Plants, oceans, clouds, the very rotation of the earth. Each breath is a collaboration with the infinite. If you can trust your breath, you can trust the rest of it too. So falling in love with uncertainty begins with small acts of trust. Trust the breath. Trust the pause. Trust the next moment to reveal itself without your interference. And once you taste that trust, even for a second, it becomes contagious. You start to laugh more easily, to forgive more quickly, to take yourself less seriously. You begin to see that life isn't happening to you, it's happening as you. This doesn't mean there will be no pain. Of course there will. But even pain begins to shimmer differently when you stop fighting it. It becomes part of the tapestry, the dark thread that makes the light shine brighter.
When you fall in love with uncertainty, death itself loses its sting. Because what is death really but the ultimate unknown, the final uncharted territory? And yet the same intelligence that brought you here will carry you there. The wave that breaks returns to the sea, not as a tragedy, but as reunion. When you understand that, fear begins to dissolve like mist at dawn. You see that life and death are two sides of the same rhythm, like inhale and exhale, like day and night. The dance depends on both. So let go. Let go not as an act of defeat, but as an act of wonder. Trust the play, the improvisation, the jazz of existence. Let it move through you. One day, you'll look back and realize that every uncertain moment was the most alive you ever were. Every detour was the path. Every unanswered question was an invitation to feel more deeply, to see more clearly, to love more fiercely. And then you'll laugh. Oh, you'll laugh. Because you'll see that all along, life was never asking you to understand it. It was asking you to dance. And the dance, my friend, is happening now. So close your eyes. Listen. Feel the pulse of the universe moving through your veins. It doesn't need your permission. It doesn't need your plans. It only asks that you join in. Fall in love with uncertainty because it's the only thing that's real enough to hold you. And when you do, you'll find that you've never truly been uncertain at all. You've just been alive.